Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear students, welcome back to our classes. I hope you all enjoyed your Eid holidays. Barakallahu feekum. So inshallah today we are going to resume our lessons. And before that I want to inform you that Monday you have CCE, first CCE, and you have science subject the first day, coming Monday inshallah. So the portion for your CCE is that 19th chapter, so this chapter, and we have been asked to do a revision of this lesson, and the test is going to be just 10 marks. We'll share a Google form link, and you have to do online test, just 10 questions. 5 questions are going to be multiple choice questions, you have to select the right answer, and the 5 questions are going to be um, fill in the blanks. So I'm going to inshallah make this easy. Whatever I teach, whatever I taught in the class, that is going to come. You don't have to really get scared of the exam, and be sincere. Don't copy, don't use your books while doing the test. Just 10 questions. After studying, just attempt to answer the questions, and whatever the score you get, that's fine, no problem inshallah. As long as you're sincere and you don't copy, that's better inshallah. Allah will help you. Okay, so let's do the revision. And the revision is going to be, I'm just going to do an overview of whatever we studied in this lesson. I'm not going to go deep, because if you want to do a revision, you can go to our videos in my channel for the 19th chapter. I'm just going to give you an overview. Okay, so in this lesson we started with biodiversity, and we explain what is biodiversity. Basically, we have enormous variety of organisms in on the earth, so that's what is called as diversity. Bio means life and diversity means different, so that's what is called as biodiversity. And one thing I have to mention you is that in this lesson, whatever you find, dark with bold letters, and this you have here bold letters, highlighted ones, all these are important. And here, okay, you have to concentrate on that. I'm not telling that you just have to study that, but I'm telling you these are important. Okay, so I was talking about biodiversity. It's basically different things. And then we went on to see this flowchart. uh, Nutrition, basically two types: autotrophic and heterotrophic. Autotrophic are those which can produce their own food from inorganic raw material, like plants. They produce their own food through photosynthesis. And you have heterotrophic, they depend upon other animals, for other organisms, for their food. So autotrophic, you have chemotrophic and phototrophic. Chemotrophic is basically they produce their food from chemical process. And you have phototrophic, solar energy, that is sunlight, solar energy, they are converted into chemical energy during photosynthesis. And you have heterotrophic, you have three types. Holotrophic, some organisms they eat other organisms, that is holotrophic. Saprotrophic, they feed on dead decaying matter like bacteria and fungi. And parasitic, they live on other living organisms. Okay, and we saw uh, this was the homework. uh, then we saw about biosphere, then ecosystem, everything. Here these are the definitions for biosphere, ecosystem, and species, and you just have to read all these things. And then we saw about levels of biodiversity. So three, how many levels we saw? Mainly three levels, yeah. Ecological diversity, then species diversity, so then genetic diversity. So if you talk about ecological diversity, then there are different ecosystems. For example, aquatic, that is water related, then terrestrial, land related. So you have different diverse organisms living in different ecosystems, in aquatic, in terrestrial, like this. And when you talk about species diversity, among the living organisms, you have different species. We talked about different species. Species are that which can do reproduction within themselves. Okay? So one species cannot interbreed with another species. Those are the diversity, different organisms based on different species. And you have genetic diversity. Among the same species, you have certain genes. About DNA and genes, inshallah, we'll study in the upcoming lessons. But here, different genes within a particular species, they have their own set of genetic material. So that we call as genetic diversity. And then we saw about patterns. What are the patterns of biodiversity? Then we saw global scenario. So there are 6 biogeographical regions. So these are those 6. Just have to remember this. And when you talk about Indian scene, you have hotspots. Hotspots are basically in regions where this the many species live, in a dense area. So you have Eastern Himalayas and Western Ghats. So flora and fauna. Flora is related to plants and things. Fauna is related to animals, and we have to conserve our biodiversity. Then we saw about classifying and naming organisms. We saw in biodiversity there are different organisms, and in organisms we have to classify and name it, yeah, because there are a lot of things and you cannot just do random names because there are millions of organisms. So we have to group them based on their similarities, how they look and how they function. So based on that we name them and classify them. We classify them and name them. Okay, so the science of classification or systematics is termed as taxonomy. As I told, wherever you find this bold letters, you have to concentrate here. And if it is like a definition, main definition like this, the science of classification or systematics is termed taxonomy. So these are new terms that define certain things. So you have to remember this all because in exam it might come. Okay, and we have further classified. There are many kingdom, phylum, subphylum, class, order, family, and genus, that is species. So here we have taken humans as an example. Say humans come under Animalia kingdom, then for phylum Chordata, and for subphylum Vertebra, class Mammalia, those mammals which have kids and they have mammary glands where they give milk to their younger ones. And you have primates, those who have grasping hands and feet. Oh, so all these things we saw. Um, and there are 3 domains of classification. You have Archaebacteria, Eubacteria, and Eukarya. So all these things you have to read it. Then we saw that there are 5 kingdoms of life. Okay, you have Monera, Protista, fungi, plantain, Animalia. These are the 5 kingdoms, and we saw them individually, their features, how do they differ, all these things. So you have to study this, inshallah. Then we saw about how organisms are named. So in scientific naming, genus and species of the organisms are mentioned. Okay, for example, Homo sapiens. So this is what is called as scientific name, and this nomenclature is called as binomial system. That is, we use 2 names. Bi means 2, so we use 2 names. So the cat we have in a house, it is called as Felis domestica. So Felis is the genus name for the cat, and domestica is the species name. So we name it as Felis domestica. So it's always either written in italics or underlined. And the one who introduced this binomial system, named as Carolus Linnaeus. You have to remember this. Inshallah, the question is going to be very easy because I don't usually set difficult question papers to my students because I want them to listen carefully in the class and study. And test is just to check if they actually listened in the class or studied something at least. Okay, and but I expect you that you should not cheat. You shouldn't cheat in your examination. Even if you score 0, that's fine, no problem. But only thing expected from you is that you put effort in learning. That's the thing is expected, and inshallah Allah will help us to succeed. And there are, we saw about these kingdoms individually. So kingdom Monera, kingdom Protista, kingdom Fungi, Plantae, all these definitions. Then we saw about briefly, we saw detailed classification of plants and classification of animals. Then we saw kingdom Plantae. They have divided into these divisions, that is 4 divisions: algae, biophyta, pteridophyta, spermatophyta. Then spermatophyta is further divided into 2 types: gymnosperms and angiosperms. And then we saw about classification of animals: non-chordata, chordata. Okay. Then we have this further classification. All this you have to read. Okay. Don't be scared of this table or this chart. Just read it and just underline this and try to remember it and write it down. Just this the subtopics, and try to write it down multiple times. And if you have your brother or your parents in your house, and you tell them, you ask them, you memorize this and tell them, tell the list. For example, in kingdom Animalia you have non-chordata and chordata, and under this you have phylum Porifera, phylum Cnidaria, and you have Platyhelminthes, like this. Okay. Then you tell your parents and study like that. Don't be scared. Just study, inshallah. Then we saw about the final topic of this lesson: conserving biodiversity. Conserving means saving the biodiversity. So there needs to be an equilibrium in the nature. So each are dependent upon other organisms, like how we are dependent upon plants and animals for our food. So we have to conserve our biodiversity. So this Operation Tiger and Operation Elephants are the projects that have helped in preventing decline in their numbers due to habitat destruction. So Operation Tiger and Operation Elephants. So what can we do? We have to do some awareness to the people so that they conserve the biodiversity, so they don't destroy the plants and animals. So that you have to remember. So this thing I asked you to do a homework, that you have to write this in your notebook. Okay, and that's it. This is the lesson, and you have to remember that you have to study well, inshallah. Just sit down, set a time, maybe 30 minutes per day, or 30 minutes in the first day session, in the morning, and 30 minutes in the night. So it's going to be 1 hour. So that's how you are going to study. So you take break and study well, inshallah. Don't be stressed and uh, worried. And inshallah, and students, that one thing I want to mention is that only few people have sent me these homeworks which I give for every lesson, writing this in your notebook and sending the photograph, what have you learned. Okay, so do good, inshallah. Monday in the afternoon I will share you the link for the test, 10 marks 5 questions, choose the correct answers, and 5 questions fill in the blanks. It's going to be easy. Just study well, and if you don't understand anything, go back to our videos which I shared for chapter 19 and study well. Barakallahu feekum. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.